Hello chaps and chapesses, and today we're going to talk about, are you a righty or are you a lefty? This is one of those long, age-old debates that fly fishermen have had. Everybody has their reasons, everybody gets on one fence or another. Well, there's only two fences, so they don't really have a lot of choice. However, I think people are right-hand wind or left-hand wind boils down to a very simple fact of how the rod was first presented to them when they first started fly fishing. A lot of it stems back to old history of salmon fishing. In the original glory days of salmon fishing, most people wound with their right hand because it was their more dexterous hand. Most people are right-handed. I'm not saying that being left-handed is a bad thing. Sometimes it can be very useful. But in this particular instance, I think it was almost an institutionalized situation. Salmon fishermen, because they could fight a fish with their left hand on a two-handed rod, where they could put the rod butt in against their hip, if you like, they could very easily wind with the right hand. Wouldn't be a problem. And I think a lot of the way that people have taken this on has been down to historical salmon fishermen. And one of the big arguments for that is if you are winding with your right hand and you've got the reel on the right hand side and you are right-handed, then the reel handle cannot get caught in your clothing or your pockets or anything like that if you hook into a fish. Most people tend to wind with the hand they're most dexterous with. And in most cases that appears to be a right hand. So they'll be happily casting away with their right hand and they'll hook a fish and then they switch over to the left hand and then they fight it with the right hand. Now that's fine if you are fighting small trout and various other small species. The issue I have with it is when you get into fighting much bigger species, that's when you can get unstuck. I know that people are going to be hurling things at me and throwing things at me, but just hear me out. Just hear me out. So my logic on this is that you should fight a fish with your stronger arm, because if you are going to fight a big sailfish or a GT or a tarpon, those battles can often continue for a very, very long time. And your biceps get tired, and because you are using your left bicep and you are predominantly right-handed, it's obviously not going to be as strong. So there you are fighting away, and sometimes people, you see them switching over and then they hold it with their, and then they switch back over and they're winding and they switch back over, and it's this constant switching motion that quite often, rather than fighting a fish and knocking it off balance, you're too busy flipping from one hand to another because you're more dexterous at winding with that right hand. I came through fishing from using fixed spool reels. So when I was very small, 4, 5, etc., I had fixed spool reels and I used to coarse fish. And predominantly, most coarse fishing reels are already set up for left-hand wind. I don't know why that is, it just is. So for me, it was a very easy adaptation. But I have certainly found that to be my advantage, because if I'm going to fight for a prolonged period of time, having the strength in my right arm and still being dexterous with winding with my left certainly makes a much more fluid battle. Because to me, if you're casting with your right hand, you automatically retrieve with your left hand. So it's just logical to then wind with your left hand. This is obviously if you're a right-handed person. If you're a left-handed person, then we're obviously going to be casting with our left hand, winding with our right hand. I don't see that many left-handed people who then switch over to hold the rod in their right hand and then wind with their left hand. Do you think we've managed to get confused yet? There's a lot of right and left going on here. Do we know our left? Left. L for left. Yes, left. Okay. So if you are a right-handed caster and you are casting out with your right hand and you put that line down and a fish takes immediately, bang, you can set the hook and you can immediately, without taking any power off the fish, you can immediately put the line back on the reel and you can start that fight. So if you are battling a big fish and you're pulling with all the strength that you've got with your dominant arm, the last thing that you want to be doing is releasing the pressure that you have on that fish by switching the rod over to your less dominant arm to wind the reel. That just makes no sense to me whatsoever. I want to carry on applying maximum pressure with my dominant arm, with my stronger bicep, and carry on winding the reel. And I think that actually it's one of those things that you can become very easily practiced in. But hey, this is my own personal preference and those are my reasons for why I do this. But it is an interesting argument. The one thing I can't stand is people who then turn around and tell you what you're doing is wrong, which has happened to me on a number of occasions, where people turn around and tell me I'm wrong for winding with my left hand. Well, how do they know they're not wrong? There is no right and wrong in this argument. It's down to personal preference, and that's what most of our fly fishing is all about, personal preference. What is quite interesting is that statistics published by various fishing tackle companies, which I have looked up, the stats are that 60 to 70% of us are right-handed. What's interesting is that 80% of those clients who are having reels set up for them are actually being done left-hand wind for right-handed fishermen, which is an interesting statistic. So maybe there's obviously some people out there who are beginning to agree with me. The other time I have noticed this distinctly to my disadvantage was when I ended up actually having to use a fixed bull multiplier on a big game rod. They're all set up right-hand wind. So fighting a big fish on that rig absolutely knocked the hell out of me. There was no way I was capable of doing it. I had to take a lot of breaks. It was all very emotional. But going back to fly fishing, the logic to me stands true. I think that when people begin to start fly fishing, it's a good idea to put them already into that mindset that you fight the fish with your stronger arm and you wind with your other hand, because you're already retrieving. It just makes perfect sense. That's not to say that whatever you do is right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. What you really need to do is reel with whatever feels comfortable to you, because actually fishing with confidence is going to be far more to your advantage than trying to learn some skill which feels natural to you. I would be very interested to hear what you have to say on the subject, so please write in the comment box below. Give me your reasons for and against. Tell me you agree with me. Tell me you despise me because of my beliefs. I would be very interested to hear your thoughts. So as always, I hope you found this video interesting. Maybe not particularly useful this week, but I hope it was interesting. And please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I will look forward to seeing you on the next one. Winding with your right hand is just wrong. It's just wrong.